Hi everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoy our shows, please like our videos and subscribe to our channel. And you can support us by clicking onto our website, ageoftruth.tv.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Age of Truth TV. I'm Lucas Alexander in Copenhagen, Denmark. It's the 24th of November 2019, and our guest today is a controversial British gentleman who's been challenging the system, his local community, and is now speaking out internationally about the dangers and health effects of rolling out 5G and electromagnetic radiation. He's a weapons expert and chief technical officer, Mark STEELE. Mark STEELE, it's wonderful to have you on the show and welcome to Denmark.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been a nice trip here. A little bit cooler than what it is in the United Kingdom, but we've got it really wet at the moment. So the fresh, cool air is a nice change.
Yeah, and I hope we can still continue to have some really nice air here in Denmark, because a lot of things are happening and you're talking about polluting the air, at least the frequencies, beaming through the air with 5G, and that's why you're here, because there's a big demonstration today, and you're also doing a lecture here in Copenhagen. First of all, before we go into the questions, please tell the audience, you're sitting here with this looking a little bit like let's just say a white Ray Charles with your sunglasses on. Please just address that for a moment.
I always wear protective eyewear. I wear it for a reason. The same as if you see anybody in forward operating bases or special forces, they normally wear protective eyewear. And what they wear, because lots of people ask me about this, they wear these, right? You wear wrap around. These are mirror-coated protective eyewear. Obviously from the sun, the rays from the sun. The reason why you wear these, they actually repel a lot of the radiation that enters the eye. And the eye's pretty sensitive. So consequently, I wear protective eyewear all the time, on screens, off screen. In fact, yesterday, I was travelling through Schiphol Airport, and a number of the airports, Newcastle Airport, a lot of the airports actually have facial recognition now. Well, facial recognition is actually 5G. These are offset signals, they're beam waves. It's radar, it's scanning your face. So anybody working in an airport where, obviously frequent flyers, they are at significant risk. So a lot of people, because obviously this is getting into winter now, they were looking at me pretty strange as I'm walking through the airport with these on. And I had one security guy actually said to me, "Why you got those glasses on?" I says, "Well, if you knew," because I know all about the radar they've just put in the airport, and consequently, if you knew how dangerous that was, you'd have protective eyewear on as well.
Well, you look a little bit like a secret agent, huh?
Well, it's like somebody out the Matrix, isn't it? And let's be honest, this is the Matrix. The whole sort of geometric system. We are actually in the Matrix, and this is part of quite another interesting conversation. But let's just stick to 5G today, because that's complicated enough without getting people into the other information.
So now we just talked about your image and your protective glasses there, or whatever it is. Is it some kind of UV filter or what?
These are all ABS, any sort of plastic lens, not glass lens, plastic lenses, they reduce the optical radiation and the radiation impact. Obviously, it reflects a lot of the radiation back out and actually reduces the amount of radiation entering the eye. Some of the microwave radiation signals from the radar and the facial scanning systems, which are now ubiquitous. You've got police, got them in, on the top of their vehicles. You've got supermarkets have them. Some of the large shopping centres have been trialling them. Facial recognition. Well, that's basically a scanner. They've actually got facial scanners, so they're scanning your face with a class 1 cancer-causing radiation. So why wouldn't you want to wear protective eyewear? I wear protective eyewear all the time. Seems pretty obvious to me, but obviously I understand the technology.
But
really
they can
well.
still use that technology, facial recognition, even though you're wearing glasses, right?
Oh,
they can
yeah,
still see it's you.
Yeah, but I'm wearing these glasses to protect myself. Obviously, you can't protect yourself totally, but you can protect yourself. At least you can protect your eyesight.
How is 5G connected to facial recognition?
Well, 5G, one of its technical parameters. You've got to remember, 5G is a large basket of technologies, from autonomous vehicles, smart meters, smart cities. That's all 5G. And how you define 5G, the focus, the antenna design, where the antenna allows, instead of, let's say, a 4G antenna where the radiation travels away from the antenna, it's called inverse square law. Depending on the antenna's design, 5G is the complete opposite. 5G focuses the radiation. And that's why 5G has got nothing to do with telecommunications. It's a weapon. 5G in all its technical parameters is a weapon. It has nothing to do. I mean, people talk about 5G, these new 5G phones that are supposed to be coming. Well, unfortunately, they're not arriving, are they? This is a smartphone, normal phone. If I was to fire a 5G signal, so let's say this has got a 5G antenna, you've got a 5G antenna up here, and you're going to fire a collimated, so this is a focused beam wave. If the antenna's over here, then obviously it hits the phone, doesn't damage your head. If I fire a sub-gigahertz radar signal directly through your head to that phone, believe us, brain injury would probably be the least of your concerns. You might have a stroke. I would definitely damage your brain in some way, shape or form, depending obviously on the energy waveform that I'm putting through the phone. But the higher data packet, the more energy it has to carry. So therefore, you're pushing that through somebody's head. And the reason, the same technology that's being used on the battlefield, these offset phase signals, that basically urban radar or the battlefield radar, so it's battlefield radar signal systems, they're on the front of a tank, and that's the reason why a lot of troops now, where they've been in a battle zone, are coming home and committing suicide. They've actually got a physical brain injury. They've got a brain injury from the radiation from the transmitters. Now,
is this what they call phased arrays?
Phased arrays, yeah.
What is phased arrays? A lot of people who are listening to this will certainly not know what we're talking about.
If I have a bank of elements, now I can have a bank of elements, you can actually have them packed very closely in a radiator, or you can actually have them quite a distance apart, because obviously they can all calibrate each other. They can calibrate to each other, so I can have them quite a distance apart. The ones that are further apart are the potentially more lethal, because obviously I can bring that focus. The further it is apart, the more focus I can get, and the more antennas I can use to actually create this focality. That's more lethal. The units that you see where they're close together, they'll have a pack of small antennas. In fact, you'll see them, the flat packs. This is what a 5G antenna looks like. You see them up on the buildings. You'll see like a little flat base. And what they do, they're an offset signal. And what it's actually doing, it's causing what's called a beam wave. They're punched out beams, and it sweeps its environment but it's actually sweeping with this pulsed beam wave. Now, they are extremely toxic, because you've got a beam wave that carries a lot more energy than a 4G transmitter ever did. See the difference with a 4G transmitter? You only have to move 10, 20, 30 meters away from it, obviously depending on how powerful it is. You only have to get a certain distance away from it. The radiation drops off significantly. Well, 5G is the opposite. Depending on the antenna design, I can focus that signal at distance, and that's why the sub-gigahertz range was actually used for long-range radar. All right, it's long-range radar. Now, when I came across the fact that 5G is operating the sub-gigahertz range and not the millimeter waves that we're being told about, that's when I become very, very suspicious, because I knew it to be radar, battlefield radar.
So just before we go into that, so phased arrays is a beam where you can actually steer the frequency.
Steer beam, the beam waves.
In a certain direction.
Yes.
However you want it. And what you want to hit. So
It's a scanner. It's a battlefield interrogation scanner, but it also doubles up as a weapon. All right, I can subdue at certain signal frequency and pulse rates. I can subdue an enemy. I can pulse rate them and psychologically cause them to have some sort of issues. So there's lots of ways you can use these, not just as battlefield interrogation. They're weapon systems.
But a lot of people, I mean most people, the official narrative, of course, tell us that it's just for a faster running internet connection. It's just the fifth generation of telecommunications and mobile frequencies and all of that. But you say it's a weapon. How can you actually explain that?
It is only a weapon. The 1G, 2G, 3G and 4G were telecommunication systems that are pretty toxic. And obviously we've seen massive increases in ill health, collapse in the flying bird population, collapses in the flying pollinator population, because anything that gets near those transmitters are at risk. All right, so if you've got these large industrial Wi-Fi units in schools, I mean, I can tell you about Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi 2.5 gigahertz actually causes diabetes. So you've got a diabetes epidemic. The medical community haven't worked out that it's the Wi-Fi in people's homes that's causing it. And Wi-Fi in schools in particular that are causing significant neurological damage. However,
do we know that Wi-Fi as well causes health effects?
Absolutely. There's tens of thousands of published peer-reviewed papers, uncontested. What I mean by that, any paper that's written and published has to be peer-reviewed. All right, peer-reviewed by other scientists in the field. So before they get published, they have to be peer-reviewed. They're published because they're scientific fact, as well as we know. Now, obviously, if somebody comes along and wants to contest that, then obviously there's a contest to see whether that paper is correct or not. These papers are uncontested. What happened, you've got a number of papers that were, a number of scientific research documents that were produced by the industry that basically say that this stuff's not that dangerous. But then you've got all of this independent, published, peer-reviewed and uncontested work that says that it is. So there's three main papers have just been recently published. There was the Ramsini Institute, 10 years, largest research project in Italy, where they actually showed in that research that non-ionizing radiation causes cancer in animal studies. The NTP study 216, it fully published in 2018, absolutely confirms the Ramsey. Now, this is an American scientific research project paid for by the American government, so that these are real bona fide, top-of-the-range scientists in their field. They also proved that non-ionizing radiation causes cancer in all of the studies. What they also showed was significant DNA damage. So there was damage to the DNA in the rats, and then where they went on to develop cancers. So this was shown that the non-ionizing radiation at the non-thermal levels was significantly dangerous. So much so that there's been a lot of calls by a number of scientists to actually have the certain levels, the 1.6 watts per kilo. This is the FCC current level of radiation that can be emitted from a mobile device, to have it reduced. We've got the ICNIRP guidelines. Now, these are guidelines only. I call them the Pirates Code. Because a guideline's a guideline, it's a code. It's not a standard. So consequently, you've got all these governments across Europe all relying on the ICNIRP guidelines. Why? Why are they relying on something that doesn't actually have any validity either to it most certainly has no validity to 5G, because 5G is a collimated signal and actually breaches the guideline. That's why it was never tested. Because if you tested a 5G antenna, it would breach the ICNIRP guideline. So it wasn't tested because they know it breaches it, because it's a weapon system. They know, I know, it's a weapon system, and that's why they didn't even test it. The industry have admitted they haven't tested the 5G antenna systems, and that is the reason why, because they know, as I know, It's a weapon. It's not for your mobile communications at all. That is just a masquerade. It's the same masquerade as the LED streetlights that they're deploying right across the whole of Europe. They are part of a weapons program.
Let's get to the LED streetlight in just a moment. We have seen an increase in cancer. I mean, a lot of people are getting cancer, and it's increasingly getting worse and worse in the past 10 years. But it's very difficult to pinpoint, isn't it, that electromagnetic radiation is the cause of cancer.
Everybody knows radiation causes cancer. We all know that. And obviously this radiation, it's all about a cumulative damage and effect, right? So the more you get, the more potentially you have to get cancer. That's just a given. Anybody that says otherwise either don't understand the science or they're just a little bit silly, a bit dim. Like governments are pretty dim. So you've got governments, and what the problem with governments is they're in total denial. But the reason they're in denial is because somebody somewhere has actually plotted and schemed to bring a technology to the people that is extremely dangerous. And this is what we're talking about in 5G. Now, for instance, there's a court case in America. This is a Samsung, and Apple are the same. Now, obviously, I've been in product development for 30 plus years. The devices, the smart devices under independent tests have been shown to emit 500% increase in the 1.6 watts per kilo. Now, the 1.6 watts per kilo, it's a FCC standard. What I'm going to say to everybody, products are built to a standard, like the windscreen in your vehicle. If I'll just go and I'll get a glass factory and I'll make some nice windscreens, but will not fit to the standard. You go out, somebody throws a stone or a pebble hits it, the whole thing shatters, you get lumps of glass stuck in your face. Be an absolute disaster. Or the temperature changes slightly and the glass cracks because I haven't adhered to the standard in building that windscreen. It's the same as your petrol. It's the same as the tyres on your vehicle. All products are built to a standard for a reason, because you've got a historical set of values to make sure that that product's safe. So, really interesting. There's a current case going on in America, a class action case against Samsung and Apple that shows that the mobile devices, the smart devices, these devices actually are emitting 500% increase on the radiation outside of the standard, more than the FCC 1.6 watts per kilo, which is a thermal value, and we know that's not safe either. But this is 500% more. Now, how do you do that? How could I build a product? Because you build a product to the standard. You don't build it outside it. So there's something very, very nefarious about these.
But you still have one, though.
I've got to have one. The problem with the
We've become addicted to the mobile phones, right? It's very convenient for our communication with people.
Believe it or not, I've got a 6210, a Nokia 6210, which was a fantastic phone, and obviously it does emit quite a lot of radiation, so it's not really safe. However, these are lethal. These are and potentially can be lethal.
Why are they doing that if there is like somebody orchestrating this from behind the scenes? Why are they actually implementing this addiction all over the world? Nobody can live without a mobile phone anymore. Very few people, at least.
Well, I can't operate without one, and the reason for that, I've tried putting my chips into older phones, and they don't work. So they only work in these smartphones. So it's basically not just addiction, but it's a necessity for me to communicate with people and get the information out. So I do have to have one.
It's smart, to make you addicted.
Well, smart, secret militarized armaments and residential technology, that's what it means. And smart, the whole smart agenda is to bring more of this equipment into people's homes. So you've got the capacity to harm. If I fill your home full of smart devices, smart meter, smartphone, smart fridge, smart cooker, this is the plan, all smart, all with overcapacity, massive overcapacity, I can then remotely come in and I can turn, because all these have got remote access points, all smart equipment has, I can come in and I can turn all of that equipment on, all at the same time, remotely, turn it all up, and I can then fire what's called an EMP, electromagnetic pulse. And if I fire an electromagnetic pulse and your building's full of this microwave radiation, well, you know what happened at Grenfell Tower. Grenfell Tower burst into flames. That was a smart fire. That was a 5G fire.
Really?
Grenfell Tower was a 5G fire, and you know it was a 5G fire because there was no bodies. The bodies just weren't there. Everybody was expecting to find hundreds of bodies. Wasn't very many remains left because I can vaporise you at the same technology, the same microwave radiation energy. You're a hydrocarbon built based product. And if I fill you full of microwave radiation from all the smart devices, smart meters, smart TVs, everything's smart, bounce your molecular structure out, and then I fire an EMP, you vaporise. The same as, you know, a lot of the other structures that we see. There's other ways that EMP weapons can be used to bring down buildings.
Are you talking about what people talked about what happened on 9/11?
9/11. 9/11 is a typical example of an EMP weapon.
So you're talking from a weapons expert point of view.
Yeah.
And what you're really getting into is DEW, right? Which is
direct energy weapon. Yeah,
directed energy weapons.
Yeah, direct energy weapons. I mean, the program of direct energy weapons went on for years. Why people are in denial of it? I mean, anybody can go and look and dig out the Brunnerman weapons program. There's a number of well-documented pieces of evidence that are actually you can find them on the internet. You may not be able to find them on Google, obviously, but you can find them on the internet.
So are you saying that direct energy weapons is connected to 5G?
Direct energy, 5G is a direct energy weapon.
How can we substantiate? How can you prove or give us some kind of evidence that this is actually true? Because I think a lot of people would like to know that.
Well, the antenna design, the antenna design allows you to direct the energy, unlike the 4G transmitters. You direct the energy. Now, the more 5G antennas I have, the more I can do the directional. That's a direct energy weapon. That's 5G.
That's incredible to hear that DEW is actually the same as 5G. So is that also connected to HARP?
HARP's a weather modification weapon system. Right. And obviously, weather modification, if I can come over a country and pour a lot of snow on it for about 6 months, then you can see how quickly you could degrade a country's ability to fight back. So obviously, all weather modification, all being weaponised. These are all very sophisticated weapons programs. It's a bit like the aluminium in air. Now, a lot of people say that, you know, the chemtrailing's not real, but I can tell you chemtrail's real. It's how you actually use an over-the-horizon weapon system. So if I have a ground-based radar, I bounce it off the ionosphere. If I've got a lot of chemical in the air, a lot of aluminium in the air, then it allows me to actually be able to see better and get a better visualization of what's actually on the ground over the horizon. So the whole putting chemicals in the air has been going on since, probably the 60s, when you were trying to track ICBMs into areas or see what your opposition's got on the ground, because obviously the Russians don't want people to be able to spy on them or fly spy planes over. So there are other ways of gathering data in at great distances by using what's called over-the-horizon weaponry.
So it is connected to HARP, it's connected to DEW, and you also talk about chemtrails. But people who are flying these planes, they don't know that they're spraying chemtrails. They think it's contrails.
They'll be told. Well, the military planes, they will know what they're carrying, but they'll think it's part of some data gathering piece of kit, and obviously they've signed up the Official Secrets Act in their country, so they can't really tell anybody.
Why is all this happening? We talked about someone or something is behind all of this. Also, this weapon that you call 5G and these electromagnetic frequencies coming from 5G. Who's behind?
Well, I always like to call them they. Those have enslaved you. Because that word fits. It's a lot deeper. The understanding of what's really going on. We're in a spiritual war. There's a spiritual war. It's not, like I said, I always stick to the science and the technicalities, but what I can be basically positive about, 5G will kill all biological life on this planet.
But why would anybody want to do that? It will affect them as well.
Absolutely. Well, that's the issue that we have. It will affect them. So that's why I'm saying it's a spiritual war. It would have to be, because you'd either have to be very, very stupid. I mean, I was talking to a US ex-military contractor, and he was telling me about these systems that are building within the infrastructure in the US, and they're building underground sort of villages and towns and things like that for a certain number to survive whatever's coming. Now, what I said to him, I said, well, that's quite interesting. Would anybody go underground with an ideology that's trying to murder 6 billion of the world's population? And he said, yeah, I see that point. I said, so really, if you take people underground who've got wealth, and you would kill them first, obviously. It's a bit like when they got when they were corralling people out of Europe to the camps. They were telling them they're going on holiday. They were probably being, I'm not sure that if anybody was being told that they were being taken out of the battle zone to save them, but this could be the same plot.
Some people speculate or think, because they have researched the Illuminati structure and the New World Order agenda, they're saying that the elite, this top faction of the military and the cabal, they have underground cities in underground bases. Is that what you're referring to? Them hiding there if something like that is happening on the surface?
Absolutely. Well, they've definitely got underground areas where they could possibly go and stay, but they could only stay for a certain length of time. And what I was saying to this particular chap, if I take out all the nuclear power stations, or 1 or 2 nuclear power stations across the world, you only have to take 2 or 3 out, where, if you kill all the workers who maintain them, then you've got this issue with the reactors overheating and the reactor actually dropping down into the water table. And then if that reactor hits the water table, you've got tons of, ionizing radiation particulates in the atmosphere. It'll kill absolutely everything for a few 100,000 years. So nobody's coming out of any camps. Those nuclear reactors are highly toxic. If that material gets into the atmosphere, it's really, really dangerous. Consequently, how do you survive that? So let's say you go underground in your little camp for a couple of years. When do you come out? You would die underground without getting natural sunlight. So any, let's say, human biological structure is not going to survive below ground for very, very long.
But it's like a doomsday, like an Armageddon prophecy here. And a lot of people will call you or anybody talking about this for a conspiracy theorist. And I'm sure you've heard that before. But why do you think that politicians are voting yes to this? This is happening all over the world. And people, also the telecommunications industry, have implemented all of this if they know that these frequencies from 5G are so dangerous.
The really interesting part, you've hit on a very, very important question. I want to cover that because it's really important. How can you get a global agenda, a total global agenda, that overrides all city mayors, politicians in each particular country, where you've got a deployment of equipment, this rush, we are going to be the first, how can you do that anywhere in the world when there's so much concern about 5G and about its potential to do harm? How can you get so many politicians in all of the areas around the world, from New Zealand to Europe, Denmark, the United Kingdom, where they're shouting from the rooftops and totally disregarding the concerns of the citizen, the subjects and citizens around the world? They're totally disregarding their concerns and real concerns. The 160,000 signatories to the 5G space appeal totally ignored. The 180 scientists, specialists in their field by EHS, Deborah Davis's group, who wrote the United Nations, wrote all the governments around the world about the existential threat from this type of radiation. And the science has proven it is uncontested. So how do you do that? How can you get a control of all these politicians right across the world It has to be something pretty amazing, and it's something a lot of the people don't understand. But the controlling the political process, the democratic process that we've all fought for, our forefathers fought for, you've lost it. You've lost your democracy, and you've lost your democracy for something that is absolutely lethal. 5G, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. They can call me a conspiracy theorist as much as they want. What I'm going to say, there is a conspiracy to kill and harm the citizens of the West and the East, to depopulate the world. There's a conspiracy. I can prove it's a conspiracy because 5G is a weapon system in all its technical parameters. It is not telecommunications. It's a communication from machine to machine. What I'm going to say to people, this isn't about robots. Ionizing radiation, I've seen robots in reactors that break down after 6 hours, where the pneumatic systems break, the hardware breaks, because the ionizing radiation is that toxic. It destroys the robots. So the robots don't live on this planet. You break down a couple of them nuclear power stations, believe us, and they don't survive either. So the whole thing is a scam, and let's just prove that. Let's get away from the conspiracy and let's just prove this.
And the politicians are not aware of the dangers, right? They don't even know what it is.
The politicians, for whatever reason, they've either been compromised, got some very nasty imagery on their computers, very distasteful things they've been up to. I'm not really sure what's happened, but they have totally lost their minds. The autonomous vehicle and the autonomous, this 3D mapping, if I was to 3D map a cityscape, so they've built all this equipment, there's radar in the cityscape, mainly in the street lighting, it maps its environment. That data has to be taken somewhere and analysed, because obviously what would be the point of doing it, right? And what's the financial point? I can tell you what the financial point is. Your council want to look into your bin because they want to see what waste that you're throwing out. That's what they've been told. However, to capture all that data, to analyse all that data, that's going to cost money. Not only is it going to cost money, you need the data capacity centres. You need the energy to go into the data capacity centre. You've got all the autonomous vehicles. It is a scam. That data capacity, they're already up to here with the data capacity, and that's just from the normal systems. So you've got this massive increase in energy that you need to run the equipment, but also the energy to run the data collection centres and the data collection centres, and they are not there. So you've got your governments deploying as fast as they possibly can 5G. Why?
Why are they rolling it out so fast?
It's a weapon system, and they know we've caught them mid-flow deploying a weapon on top of the people. That's why it wasn't tested. I mean, how can you get a technology that's been untested, unproven, and breached the Nuremberg Code and uninsurable? It is uninsurable for harm. So consequently, we know it does harm because obviously it's a pretty sophisticated bit of weaponry on the battlefield, and that's why the West and the East military use this equipment on the battlefield as a weapon. So you've got that type of equipment coming into a cityscape near you, and your politicians are going, yeah, we want it. We want this as quickly as possible. We want to be the test bed. Well, testing technologies on human beings and in cityscapes is in breach of the Nuremberg Code. It's a crime against humanity, because I can show you that technology will do harm.
Who gave the orders to the politicians to roll it out so fast? If the politicians are on a need-to-know basis or compartmentalized, and they actually don't know what it really is.
Compartmentalised, very interesting point you've just made there, so we'll cover that. The compartmentalisation of any technology tells me it's a weapon, because it's one of the weapons deployment systems. When you build out a weapon, I was given a project once, I got a bit of wood, circular bit of wood, and they said, we need to build a rig, it needs to do this, and this. And I said, all right, fantastic, what's the bit of wood? You just need to know, just build that round there. So anyway, we built this rig. And eventually, what actually happened, a couple of trucks came in, offloaded this torpedo ahead with a laser-guided system, and it was a BA Marconi's project. And obviously, but I was there because I had to put the torpedo into the rig, so I knew what it was. So the bit of wood really didn't work. But if somebody hadn't seen the torpedo, they wouldn't have known what that part of the project was. if you know what I mean. It would have been, well, all I see was a bit of wood. So you compartmentalise all weapons deployments so that the people who are building into it don't actually understand. So, for instance, the antenna design for 5G, these are the small micro cells in the streetlights. They've got they've got a couple of different designs. They've got a flat plate dielectric lens or a printed on dielectric lens, and that's to focus the signal at a target. It's actually to focus what the technologists believe it, to focus a signal on an autonomous vehicle. But as we've already discussed, that whole thing's just a smoke screen. It's a smoke screen to deploy a weapon. Because what I can do with those type of antennas is actually see you, scan you, and shoot you. I can shoot a person with a dielectric lens antenna system.
From the LED street lights, the lampposts.
From the lampposts.
People think, well, it's very nice to have, some lights on the street, and now it's...
Well, it's really funny. I mean, obviously, when you tell anybody that your street light's a weapon, I mean, it is unbelievable. So I always laugh about that, because it is quite, and I say to people, don't believe what I say, just do your own research. The LED streetlights are part of a weapons program, and let me explain what a weapon is. A weapon is something that's designed to do bodily harm. Now, if, let's say, you give me a bit of timber, a small bit of timber, and you give it to a joiner looks at it and thinks, oh yeah, I can carve a little car, or I could make a little table, or I could do something with that. You give me a bit of wood, give me a bit of 2x4, and I'll see a weapon. I'll see something I can fashion into a weapon. I can put some nails in it, I can put a handle on it, I can create a weapon system with it. So obviously I look at things from a totally different perspective. And if you look at the LED streetlights, I know the people that designed these, and these have been designed as a weapon. I can prove that. First and foremost, the elements, the LED streetlight element, the radiation they emit is toxic. It's 450, 460 nanometers, and that's retinal cell and retina cell toxic. And where the danger, because it's pulse modulated, it damages the cells and the photoreceptive cells in the skin and also in the eyes. And that then reduces your ability to produce melatonin. Melatonin suppression increases your cancer risk massively, because obviously melatonin production allows your body to repair itself over night time, and any of the dodgy cells that could be possibly pre-cancerous, it kills them, gets rid of them. So melatonin suppression, massive issue, massive health issue. It also disrupts your vitamin A production, vitamin D production. It's basically a stressor. So those LED lights, now if I'd saw a lot of them in a diffuser, where you've actually got a diffuser that reduces the optical radiation hazard, I would look and say, well, yes, it's not a very good light, but that's not, I wouldn't see that as a weapon. But the fact that these design lights are actually cocked up like this, so that the elements are here, so they catch your eye, they catch your skin, there's no diffuser, that is a blatant weapons deployment, because all artificial light should have a diffuser. Now, LEDs are extremely toxic. Blue LEDs are a lot more toxic than the RGB, that's the red, green and blue LEDs. That
How do you know the difference?
Your screen is a red, green and blue. It's obviously so they can get the full colour range, but it's spectrally more balanced. So spectral imbalance is a problem, it's an issue. Most incandescent light, spectrally balanced fluorescent lights, there's a lot of different emissions, but where LEDs all produce a larger proportion of the 450, 460 nanometers. This is the blue portion of the spectrum, which is retinal cell toxic.
How do you know if it's a blue street light in your neighborhood or around the city?
Well, they're all blue. They're all blue, and what they've done, they've doped them. They've actually doped them with a phosphor doped material, and what that does, that gives the impression that it's white. So it gives you this bluey, whitey, and they're also doped with other chemicals to give them a creamy. However, that doping actually wears off over time. So those light systems, which I expect them to be in for many, many years, as every year goes by, they become more toxic. because they emit more of the blue light radiation. And it is not so much the LEDs, it is the LEDs, but it's not so much that. It's the fact that they were designed as a weapon because they took the diffuser off. By having the light cocked up like that, and actually so it causes glare, catches your eye and your face and your skin.
So these street lights are connected in some kind of way, technologically, to each other or somewhere else, or are they just beaming that frequency by itself?
No, the 5G LED are inextricably linked, because obviously 5G is coming into your street as an urban radar.
Through a cord or through just some kind of Wi-Fi system?
It's through no. They do power line. If you wanted to, you can take the signal to ground through the cables, but you can actually also put them in air. So they do actually have a larger radar capturing node somewhere in the area. So you'll have, maybe 1,000 microcells all talking back to a larger node, and then that larger node takes that information back. It's called backhauling. So the scanner that's in the streetlight scans all of the technologies in your home and backhauls. It can spy on everything in your home. It can backhaul all the data out of that. So everything that they want to see or hear, they can do that. But that's not what 5G is. See, 5G is primarily, that's what it's technically supposed to be able to do. But like as I said before, they don't have the data capacity. So that tells me that it's something else. It's not just about spying, which is obviously illegal anyway. It's more about it being a weapon. And if you look at the hardware, you look at the capacity of the equipment on the streetlight, on the antenna board, the antenna boards have got a mass amount of capacity, supercapacitors, all for a charge where they can actually fire what's called an EMP. Your smart meter's got them in. Your smart meter's got supercapacitors in. The boards and the lights have got supercapacitors in. The antenna boards have got massive capacity. So the capacity, they're building up the capacity in the weapon ready for when they want to fire what's called an electromagnetic pulse weapon. So the more people put smart devices into their near locality, and as soon as they get to the correct type of densification, they can take your town down. They can take your city down. They'll take you down. That's what the plan is.
That's shocking, and will be for a lot of people to hear that. What about the wireless smart meters? In Denmark here, it is mandatory to have a smart meter rigged up in our homes. And a lot of people would like to say no to that. Most people don't know what it is, and they think it's very convenient. Is it better to get a wired smart meter, cabled?
All meters should be analog. All meters, there should be you need to have meters that work first and foremost. If I can actually travel into a meter, I can hack into it. So first, anybody that's got a smart meter and they haven't had it hacked, so they're not paying the bill, you're pretty dim. Because you can hack into these systems. You shouldn't really be paying them, because really that smart meter that you've just fitted into your home is going to try and kill you. So it's how.
And even the cabled ones.
Well, the cable ones, I'd have to actually look at the technicalities. You'd have to actually show us the equipment, because obviously a lot of this equipment's being built to do harm.
And can they still use that for surveillance?
Depending on the equipment that's built in it. I'd actually have to see the hardware. If I had a look at a cable smart meter, I'd be able to tell you what it's actually there for.
And you know about the hardware. You know about the technicality behind all of these, devices, right?
Well, I know about weapon systems. So obviously, like I said, when I look at the capacity in these smart meters, it's absolutely massive. You don't need that capacity for somebody to monitor how much energy you're using. I mean, for instance, the Procter & Gamble, P&G, which is Pacific Eastern Gas, which was a Rothschild-owned business. The meters they were mandated to put on people's homes in California. Now, they were saying that the meter only reported back to the central hub once a day. It was found that it was reporting 60,000 to 120,000 times a day, popping off this radiation emission. Now, why would an energy company want to know what sort of power usage you are using? In fact, that takes power. That meter use a lot of power to actually send that communication 160,000 times a day. So what's its real purpose? It isn't, we're being sold this deception by these organisations, and it's a total and absolute deception.
So the energy company must be linked to something else, because I'm sure that somebody working at an energy company is not interested in what we're doing in our homes, if they can actually listen in on what is happening there.
P&G, all the equipment in the smart meter is made in China. So if you look at the hardware that's built into those and possibly the software programs, it's all Chinese. So if I want to come into your home and spy on you, that data could be going back to China.
And wow. And what would they use it for?
Well,
China?
Surveillance of an individual to check up, who's in your home. I can listen to you. If I fill a home full of microwave radiation and I see a disturbance in it, says your voice, this is ultrasound. So you've got sounds coming out of your voice, right? That causes disturbance in the microwave radiation blanket, and obviously I can pick up that disturbance and I can send that back down the meter so I can listen to what you're saying. They can hear you, they can see you, and they can hear you. I mean, these 3D mapping capability from the streetlights, it's phenomenal. I mean, you're talking about 800 plus million pulses a second. So it's beam waves sweeping with this scanner. I can see you, and I can hear you.
But do you think it's China listening to us, wanting to?
They have the massive potential to do that, or to target individuals who have information that they require. However, that's not what 5G is about. 5G is totally and only.
But what about our own governments, in our own countries, or in the Western world? Why China?
I think the Western governments look to me as if they're being hacked. All the governments have been hacked, and the reason why they're being hacked, there's been no public consultation in this technology deployment. There's been no safety checks in the deployment. There's been absolutely nothing, and this comes from somewhere else, and it's happening right across the West. So I suggest to everybody, there's not a single politician in that, in your parliaments, etc., who are representing the people. They're representing something else, and that something else is extremely terrifying and illegal.
But not China, though, huh?
Must be China. Why wouldn't it be China?
But what about the New World Order agenda? All the presidents and the prime ministers and movers and shakers and heads of states talked at some point publicly about wanting to implement a New World Order.
Yeah, well, the New World Order, whoever it is, or whatever it is, it's pretty dastardly and pretty illegal.
So that's not China, though, even though that is
China's
something else in itself, isn't it?
One of the things about this technology, the first documented use of 5G was actually Germany. The technology then went under Operation Paperclip to California. That technology was then developed, spent billions of pounds developing chipsets, etc. And then that technology was then taken to China, because obviously China is a very good place to manufacture things pretty cheaply, because they work 6 days a week and very, very low sort of base cost. So that equipment now would have run into the tens of thousands of pounds to put equipment into people's homes.
But some people suggest, many researchers into this field of, conspiracy and truth research suggests that the New World Order structure is connected all throughout the world, and China is part of that as well. If you go really high up in the pyramid.
Well, if you only have to look at how they destroyed the manufacturing bases across the West and took all of that technical capability and manufacturing capability to Asia. Now, who funded that? What was all that about? And you had this totally disrupted economic system where the US, the West, were lost all of this. And obviously you can see the resistance that this President Trump has against trying to bring the technologies back to the United States. I mean, he's having an awful lot of resistance to that plot, his plan, to try and add a little bit of rebalance into the whole system. And it's
but politics, it's just a theater. game, isn't it?
Totally
Play.
well, it's totally theatre, but you know where we've got to get really serious with 5G. If we don't stop the theatre and the party, this 5G is going to kill you.
So somebody must be behind it, and not necessarily a specific place like China, but part of an agenda. Is that a New World Order agenda?
Well, the UN Resilient Cities agenda, all your councils, all your governments have all signed up to this. This is this fake CO2 reduction issue. CO2 doesn't actually have anything to do with climate change. It's a total scam. I worked on a CO2 project when I was at one of Lloyd's Oil and Gas Industries projects. We looked at the whole thing. The whole thing is a scam. In fact, energy companies love it.
So is that part of UN Agenda 21, which is now which they now also call UN Agenda 2030?
The UN agenda, it's definitely UN agenda. It's the Resilient Cities agenda, the whole LED streetlights, smart meters, any of these, you know, the XR, Extinction Rebellion, they're pushing smart meters, pushing LED, pushing the whole CO2 thing. Whole thing's a total scam. In fact, I don't know where they came from, but obviously they've got some fantastic financial backers, and they're in the media all the time, so you can tell it's, you know, it's not a groundswell. In fact, I heard that they did a demonstration in London, and all the people who were demonstrating were being paid. So that tells you all you need to know.
So climate change, in your opinion, is not happening. It's not real. The CO2 scare, it's not really a problem. And how is it connected to 5G?
Well, climate change, to be fair, there's always been climate change. It goes back, you know, thousands of years. You only have to look at the models to show that climate changes. I mean, that's just a matter of fact. It'd be stupid to think that it doesn't. The impact man has on that are, you know, probably minuscule compared to either volcanoes, the sun. The sun itself actually does regulate quite a lot what goes on the earth. For people to think that man has some major detrimental effect, I'm not sure that they don't, you know, they will have some effect, but whether they have the major effect that's been trying to be purported by these groups, it's fake. It's absolutely fake. It's a fake. You know, the Earth's got this fantastic way of balancing itself. I mean, if I pour more CO2 in the atmosphere, well, the plants, it's the green gas. So if you put more CO2 in, then the trees will grow faster. You'll get more greenery, and then that will then cool the planet. So, and also, you know, the temperature rise, these temperature rise readings that are taken from airports. Normally when you take temperature rise at these temperature and weather gauged areas, the airports, ex-military bases, now all those military bases and airports, etc., where they're taking these measurements, you've got far more radar, far more 5G type equipment, far more planes coming in. If a plane's coming in to land at an airport and it's got radar on it, all that equipment where you're taking the measurements from, it's going to increase, because obviously this microwave radiation in air. What's coming out the front of that plane is microwave radiation in air. So if you've got antenna systems on the ground and you're measuring the temperature, your temperature's going to increase. I would expect, in fact, I'm surprised that the temperature haven't increased significantly more because of where they're taking the measurements from. The measurements are mainly taken from military bases or airports, you know, where, you know, you need to understand what's going on with the weather in a particular day in its locality. And then all that information is collated at a central point. This was happened during the war. All of those areas have been polluted with a lot more microwave radiation. That microwave radiation in air increases the temperature. That is basic physics. So if I fill a cityscape with lots of these transmitters and antennas, and that's the plan for 5G, billions more antenna, billions more transmitters, I'll increase the temperature. I will increase the temperature. That's basic physics.
So why is the mainstream media massively promoting climate change and the CO2 scare and say that practically that the world is going under and people are protesting and are afraid, but they don't really talk about the dangers and health effects of electromagnetic radiation and 5G?
Absolutely, they're totally well. Once again, I think like the government, your media have been hacked. So all the mainstream media has been hacked. It's only the alternative media that are actually covering the realities of what's going on now. anybody that gets their information or their news from the mainstream media, believers, they're just brainwashing. They're basically propaganda tools. You know, we are in a very, very sophisticated war. And obviously they've declared war on the people. I'm pretty sure they've declared an illegal war on the people because of this technology, this weapons deployment in our streets. And obviously the mainstream media are part of the propaganda tool on the government side to make sure people are asleep, so they don't wake up to what's going on. And believers, they need to wake up now. They don't wake up in the next 2 or 3 years. Believers, there's a lot of them going to be dead. We've already seen in the Gateshead area 23% increase in stroke from the introduction of the 5G. This is the 5G on the street lights. So they haven't turned it fully up yet. It's not fully operational, but we've already seen a 23% increase in stroke. We've seen a massive increase in cancer deaths, heart attacks. All can be shown in the science that this type of radiation causes that harm to the human. Like I said, definition of a weapons system is something that's designed to do harm. And these products are designed to do harm. I can prove they do harm. Science says it do harm. We've got the epidemiological data showing that it has caused harm. That is an attack on the people. These are illegal fitments. There's been no environmental impact analysis done, no health impact analysis done, no public consultation. We've got these technologies coming into our streets, and that in itself is illegal. So they're legally deploying equipment that they don't want to actually assess to see how safe it is, and all they're doing is they're telling you it's safe. Anybody that believes anything a government says today, there's something wrong with you. So you've got a mental incapacity. There's something wrong, whether it's cognitive dissonance or other. You believe what your government tells you today. Believers, is something you're not well.
They're planning on putting up, 53,000 satellites around Earth to create these rays from the 5G smart grid around Earth. Was that what it's
Well, that's what they're purporting that. And I think the reason why they're doing that, they're trying to get people to put their head down. What I'm going to say to people, satellites in the sky are basically mirrors. Not all of them, but most of them, because you haven't
mirrors?
They're just a mirror in the sky. It's the same as art glass, all right? It's a reflection. So what you do, you've got a ground-based weapon, fires a signal up to the satellite then focuses it back down to a target on the ground. So people have to remember, the only way those satellites will work, they need ground-based stations to drive them. So don't get too worried about these bits of mirror systems in the sky, because they really can't affect you as long as we take out
They cannot affect you.
Well, they can.
So we're not being radiated all over the planet.
Yeah, you'll be irradiated all over the planet. But what you've got to remember, the equipment's on the ground. The equipment's on the ground. So people don't, because I know a lot of people, I've heard them say, oh, it's terrible, if they put them up, that's it, we're finished. No, you're not. The main driver of that satellite equipment, the weapon system, is actually on the ground.
And the 5G antennas, their beams cannot travel a long distance, so they put it up just outside of people's homes, right?
No, they travel a long distance. This is another smoke screen by the industry. These are not millimeter waves. Millimeter waves don't travel. They do travel quite a distance, but they don't travel very well through brickwork and concrete. Where sub-gigahertz travels with you through brickwork and concrete. And that's why the antennas that they're bringing into your cityscape are sub-gigahertz. So it's a lie. It is a fabrication, another deception by the industry to say that they don't travel very well, so we're having to put them up all over. No, they're putting them up all over because they're going to kill you. Their plan is to murder you, so they're putting them up all over. Right? These are sub-gigahertz transmitters. They have they're long range radar. They've got massive capacity to travel in the built-up urban environment. That's the lie. The lie. The industry is a total fabrication. It's a deception.
So you're saying that climate change and the fact that we're hearing about that every day, we're now in 2019 in November, And that is really the big story all the time. It's a diversion away from 5G.
Total diversion. The whole climate change is a total diversion. I've been listening to the climate change argument since the 60s. It's went on and on and on and on. It's an emergency. There was emergencies in the 80s. We've got this climate emergency. The world's going to end. It's ended in 10 years. We'll be all dead by, the next millennium. Didn't happen.
But there was a book or a manifesto made by the Club of Rome talking about if you want to implement a problem that could be the danger of climate.
Well, what you do, you frighten people. See, I frighten people by telling them the truth. I tell them the truth. I tell them 5G is going to kill them. They try and get me locked up and sent to prison.
Yeah, and please talk about your story, because you had a big problem with your local council in Gateshead. And I think if you can just briefly tell people your story of what happened there. And there was actually a judge who said that you were in fact an expert. So that's also very interesting. Please tell us your story there. What happened?
What happened, I'd actually wrote to the local authority with my concerns about the technology, because I'd measured radiation in people's bedrooms. We had a lot of people getting nosebleeds. The radiation levels were illegal. I was measuring 2,000 and 3,000 millivolts, average about 1,200 in the bedrooms in the Gateshead area.
And you did that because?
I had a couple of neighbours who knocked on my door and were asking me why they were developing nosebleeds after the installation of these LED streetlights. So when I started investigating, I measured the radiation in their bedrooms, and obviously it was pretty toxic. So I realised what was going on. I wrote to the council. I thought they'd made a mistake. So I wrote to the council and I said, look, I need to find out about this technology. They sent us all of the information on a freedom of information request, but the technology, the company behind it, were lying in the technical output that they'd sent to the council. There was a few serious anomalies. It didn't make any sense. And obviously from a technical perspective, it wasn't making any sense at all. So consequently, I pushed the council. I went into the council. I had a meeting with the councillors, and I actually did a full talk at a full council meeting. There was 60 councillors there. The mayor, they were all there. And I went through the technicalities and asked a couple of questions. They thought it was all a little bit funny. And I then turned around and I said to the chief executive, when this comes out, you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. This is genocide. This is a crime against humanity and breach of the Nuremberg Code. And I walked out. I then, because they obviously just weren't listening, yeah, whether it was stupidity, ignorance, greed, or complicity to the crime, the genocidal plot, the crime that they were committing on my countrymen, women and children. And then what happened, I then set up a Facebook campaign. We got a few people start making a bit of a noise. The next minute, I was served with an injunction from the council to gag me, and I was gagged for over 3 months. I couldn't speak about 5G, couldn't do anything, because of the court injunction, it was to stop me from posting anything on social media. Because
they wanted to jail you if you did?
I'll jail you straight away, you in breach of an injunction. So that was an interim injunction. Anyway, when we got to court, we eventually got to court, which took 3 months. I had all the documentary evidence to show that this was genocide, and to show that the technicality, the equipment wasn't what the council was saying it was, but it was in fact part of a weapons programme. So anyway, I get into court. The chief executive got up, perjured herself. She said I went to attack her in the chamber at the full council meeting. The mayor said I went to attack her in the full council meeting. And the judge, fortunately, there was a chap, a guy called Stephen. He was actually in the public gallery and he'd videotaped the whole thing. The council didn't know that. And obviously we presented to the court that recording of me not attacking the councillors, not attacking the mayor. And the judge was like, well, I can't, he's standing there and obviously I see him wagging his finger at you at the end and then he walks away. He doesn't go to attack you at all. Can you explain to me why you're saying that you went to attack you? they didn't know what to say. They just perjured themselves. So what they did, they fabricated this whole evidence to the judge. Well, he obviously could see through it. He'd not seen it before. They had 11 officers from the council all made and fabricated evidence against me in that court case. However, the judge saw through the whole thing and said, I'm going to read his skeleton argument after lunch. Well, my skeleton argument, right, in that case, because they thought they had a slam dunk, they were just going to get me gagged. I wouldn't be able to speak about 5G ever again. But after the lunch, we broke for lunch about 2 o'clock, came back after lunch, and obviously in that time period, the judges read my skeleton argument. And in that skeleton argument, what it stated was, no authority has the right to harm man. This is in breach of the law. This is in breach of God's law. Right? This technology is dangerous. And I went on to break down all the technology, all the exhibits were there, where I showed what the technology was, how dangerous it was, and how it had harmed these children. We also had a number of witness statements, people that were ill, where they'd been to doctors, where they'd all been occasioned. There was one chap, David. David's wife had died of a brain cancer that came on very quickly. She died within a couple of months. Very strange brain cancer. Unfortunately, he couldn't actually come to the court case because he died. He died of a heart attack in his own home prior to the court case. And, you know, one of the things that we've seen in Gateshead, like I said, we saw this 23% increase in stroke in the area since the deployment. This 5G is a killer. There's nothing more. It's a killer. The judge then...
But had they already implemented 5G in Gateshead,
yes,
where you live? Really?
5G, they started deploying 5G as early as 2011. 2011 it started coming on street light systems across the country in 2011. That was the earliest we have of it. The judge in the case turned around and said, this man is very, very expert. And he said, I'm telling Gateshead Council now, you debate the 5G risk. The public have a right to know. He said, this is democracy in action. Well, the whole court just rose up, hey, like that, right? Because the court was absolutely rammed to the ceiling. And so we've got a result. However, the council haven't debated it. They can't debate it because they're going to prison. They've committed a crime on the people that we've discovered. And obviously that court case, we got the coverage all over the world, which was fantastic. And that's what set off a lot of people starting to question, hang on a minute, if this chap's going to court over 5G, what is 5G? Well, unfortunately, if you've listened to any of the talks that I've been involved with, I'll tell you, it's a weapon system.
And you have a lot of slides, and you're really going in depth in your lectures so that people really can hear what it really is, and you are very thorough in your description, of course. One
of the things that's, you know, technically it's pretty demanding. I try and keep it as layperson terms as possible so that people can understand the existential threat of 5G to them. You know, the good thing is, you know, well, not a good thing, but the really interesting thing, the fact that they've put 5G on every single street light, and the street light itself is not a street light. It is masquerading as street lighting. It's part of a weapons program called soft kill. And what you'll see is, because of the cumulative damaging effect of the LED street light and these blue phosphor-coated LEDs, you'll start to see massive increases in death rates, cancer rates, chronic issues. You know, the whole thing's going to start to go like that. You're going to see that hockey stick. But fortunately, we are too early. Don't let anybody be despondent and think, oh, well, we'll just give up and die. No, we start to fight back. We start to be the resistance. We start to get together and fight against this crime because we're too early. The plan has been discovered. Their plan to kill everybody is up to 2025. Well, we've got years left. We just need to wake people up. People just need to wake up. We need to take down these criminals and the criminal enterprise. They've got their wetted signatures on this equipment. They've allowed a technology into your street that is illegal, unlawful, uninsurable, untested, and breach the Nuremberg Code. That is a crime. This is a massive crime against humanity, and we can prove it. We have the technicalities and the science that substantiates everything that we're saying. We just need to get them into court. We need to get these criminals into court, right? We need to see them behind bars for the rest of their lives for the crime they've committed against us.
So what about the LED light bulbs that people have in their homes? Are they dangerous as well?
It's a totally different, well, an LED light bulb in your ceiling in the home, and it's got a diffuser on it. So obviously the light is reflected, so if light hits that table, it reflects it in my eye. That's reduced the optical radiation hazard significantly. All right, so don't worry about those. I wouldn't worry too much about your screen. I would say don't use screen time too much. Children, no.
When you say screen, you mean being in front of the computer?
Yeah, computer screens. Children shouldn't be on computer screens. Children shouldn't be on small devices. And the reason for that is they've got a clear lens. So they take more of this radiation and it's far more toxic to them. Children should absolutely, it should be like smoking. Children shouldn't be allowed to be on these screens or these laptops until at least they get into like 18, where the eye, the protection of the eye, the cornea, actually reduces the optical radiation hazard to people when they get to about 18, 20-year-old. But children should never ever be anywhere near them. And if they are going to be playing on them, because I mean some people are going to just carry on, make sure they're at distance. And if you can see that light radiation anywhere near their skin, you know, I see kids where they've got them, you know, right up against their eyes, they're lethal. The gaming headset's lethal. That's basically a device in a box with a set of magnifying glasses. So virtual reality, that's a complete no-no. A lot of the technologies that they're trying to test on you are all illegal, all pretty toxic, you know.
Some people say that 5G is connected to AI, artificial intelligence. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it is connected to AI, and they're developing AI computers. Well, what I'm going to tell you about an AI system, if I put a weapon in your street and you connect it to an AI system, the AI is going to see pretty quickly that the only threat to its own survivability is mankind, so it's going to kill you.
Smart meters as well, and what they call Internet of Things.
The Internet of Things, the kill grid of things. The more these transmitters you put, I mean, everything that can possibly be hardwired should be hardwired. Everything. Your computer in the home should be hardwired. If you've got Wi-Fi, it should be on demand only. Very simple to put a demand only Wi-Fi system on everything, your mobile phone. Your mobile phone's emitting radiation when it's not on. Why? Why is it emitting radiation when it's not on? It's absolutely ridiculous. It should only be in use when it's on. So we can have these technologies, we can have all these technologies and we can have them and they can be a lot safer. All technology carries with it a risk, but there should be a risk-benefit analysis before any technology should be brought to the market. And these technologies, 5G technologies, smart meters, I mean smart meters are a fire hazard. They're illegal, they're experimental. I mean, the amount of fires that they've caused across the world is unbelievable. And what happened, you've got the energy companies covering it up. They're blaming boilers, something else, or the fitter. The fitter didn't fit it correctly. Did he not? No, what happened, the design of the smart meter, the design, because it doesn't have a surge arrestor, it's compromised. All meters have a surge arrestor for a reason. It's so they can take an energy surge to ground. It's to save your appliances from bursting into flames. Or the meter, well, a smart meter doesn't have one, so consequently it's a fire risk.
So if some people are actually lucky enough or even able to refuse having a smart meter rigged up in their homes, then if they live in a flat or an apartment or just anywhere, they will be radiated from other people's wireless smart meters, right?
Yeah,
what do they do? What can people do to protect themselves also from 5G and even the street lamps that you talk about?
Protective eyewear is a must, but also speak to your neighbours. Tell your neighbours how dangerous this technology is. It'll give them diabetes. It'll reduce their life expectancy.
But they probably don't know anything about all this. You have to start from scratch, right?
Yeah, you need education.
But what if they refuse to listen to it and just think that you're a nutter?
Sue them. Sue them. They're trespassing on your home with a noxious substance. They're trespassing on your home. If I was to blow smoke through your letterbox all the time, then that's a noxious substance. Well, microwave radiation is a noxious substance. Sue them. If they don't listen, and take the flat off them, because you have a case. You actually have a case. They are emitting radiation into your home, and that is in itself an offence. It's trespass.
Do you think you can say no to the electricity company to have a smart meter?
You must say no.
But what if they just turn off the electricity?
Well, then you get them into court, sue them, get them into court. They're illegal. Smart meters should be illegal. It's only because your government have allowed it to happen.
Yes, but if it is by law, mandatory.
Can't be any law. There's no law. I think it was Sir William. No law can be drafted that is in breach of God's law. And God's law states quite clearly, you cannot be harmed. You cannot be bodily harmed. If I bring any technology, their laws don't stand. We need to take them into court and we need to test these criminal enterprises, whatever they call them in law, to put a smart meter in. It's absolutely ridiculous. So they can put a piece of equipment in that harms the citizen and think they can draft a law around it. Well, no, they can't, because it's God's law, and they lose their authority on trying to harm you.
So what can we do if you have any advice for people listening to this and actually thinking that it's very, very frightening to hear all of this information? What can people do from now on?
Well, anybody in Denmark, across the world, get involved locally with groups. You always have to be mindful. There's a number of groups that have been already compromised. Obviously, there's groups that are, pretty solid. Be the resistance. Whether you do it yourself, whether you get involved with other numbers of people, be the resistance. Get involved with a number of different groups. Anybody wants any advice on who can be trusted or not, just ask me. I'm the person to go to if you want to know what groups can be trusted, what can't be trusted, because I can smell them out pretty quickly. I know exactly what they're about. Anybody that calls me, for instance, because obviously I brought this whole bit of information to the wider group and the world about the dangers of 5G.
What was the result of the court case?
The court case, the judge wouldn't gag me. What he said was, this is in a massive public interest, this is democracy in action. He actually encouraged us to carry on the campaign. So the council were pretty upset. Obviously, they went off with their tail between their legs. But that's just, this is just part of, they have to understand this. They're part of this agenda they've signed up to, this UN Resilient Cities agenda. They all have. All your councils are signed up to this agenda. It's not just the, it's not just the individual councillors, but they're all acting illegally. This technology is illegal.
Do you think that we can stop it? Do you think people can actually stop
Absolutely.
5G from being rolled out?
Absolutely. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be fighting it if I thought I'd only take a fight on if I can win it. And I'm pretty sure that we win this, because in all battles, whether they be spiritual battles or other, God always wins. So this is a God's fight against evil, and believers, we win this. Absolutely. I mean, think about it, the serendipitous event that I was put into an environment where they were testing this equipment. So we've got all of the statistics, we've got all of the data, the scientific data to show the significant harm to the person. The diabetes increases, the heart attack increase, the cancer increase, all that data is there and available for anybody who wants to fight against this. We have all the technical evidence, we've got the legal documents ready. If anybody wants to see them, if they want any help technically to take a court action, just come and see me. It's all there. I'll help anybody to try and stop this crime.
So you believe in God, and you talk about a spiritual war, that this is actually a spiritual war as well. But if there is a God, in whatever shape or form, why would he allow 5G to be rolled out?
Well, if you from a spiritual perspective, it's quite an interesting conversation. We'll probably go another hour or so to have a talk about it. This is a spiritual war, without doubt. Why would anybody want to kill all biological life? That's just as a matter of fact. So the spiritual war's on. I've never been a religious person, but I'm going to tell you now, the contracts that the cabal have, they are with God. So you'll find that the contractual laws, right, your legal process, the laws that are laid down by your courts are all God's law. It's God's law for a reason, because God's real. Anybody who said that he's not, doesn't actually understand contract law, because all of the laws that have been written actually are predicated on God's law. So why? If God's not real, why are they all predicated on God's law? It's not some mythical And if you understand quantum mechanics, simulation theory, and this whole maths, the geometrician of the universe, let's call God, geometrician of the universe, of course it's man-made. God made. Anybody that says that this just came out, I mean, the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life is this, the Big Bang Theory. I mean, how any scientist can actually hold their head up and talk about the Big Bang Theory where it all came out of nothing. I mean, come on. That's about as ridiculous a proposition as, how do you get something from nothing, from a scientific perspective? It's ridiculous.
We could actually talk for hours, and I think we should continue sometime in the future. And there are many topics to discuss, also well connected to 5G and the whole problem here. But if people want to get in contact with you and want to learn more about what you're saying, or even having you to come to their place for a lecture, how can they find you?
Go to the Save Us Now. It's www.saveusnow.org.uk. You can get contact there, and they'll pass their details over to me. So that's probably one of the best ways. If that's compromised, there are other Facebook, YouTube channels you can make contact there, because unfortunately the communications are compromised. That's just a given. The cabal don't want me speaking to people across the world. If you find it difficult to make contact, which a lot of people do, just remember this: you're obviously important in the fight, because the people that they do get to contact me may not be as instrumental. So if you do get blocked or challenged and you don't get a reply, remember you're being blocked. That's the most important thing.
It's been absolutely informative, fascinating, and intriguing to have you on the show, and I want to thank you very much.
Thanks.
Mark STEELE, for doing this interview with Age of Truth TV.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mark STEELE, and thanks to all of you for watching Age of Truth TV. You can support us by clicking onto our website, ageoftruth.tv. And please subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and hit the bell for notifications. Your support is greatly appreciated. On behalf of the entire Age of Truth TV team, we thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.